The fourth Dusk Star from Night in the Woods is Simone the Fighter. You can find out about her by visiting Mr. Chazikov on day 6, the final day of the Weird Autumn chapter. She's depicted as a deer in a military coat and wielding a rifle. It's said that Simone lived in a good land, but even in the best of countries, there are still roots of oppression. Over time, these roots rose up and became full weeds that choked out all else. Eventually, the government closed down the country's border and set up a curfew, and it's then that Simone and her comrades took action. They sabotaged, infiltrated, and freed prisoners. Simone was one of the first resistance fighters to be identified, and the government tried to capture her, but she managed to evade them even after they put up wanted posters for her. Throughout the land, whispers of her exploits grew, to the point where she became a folk hero, and more of her countrymen prayed that she would be their salvation. When the conflict between the government and the resistance finally boiled over, Simone and her fellow freedom fighters charged the palace gates. But behind those gates were cannons, and Simone and her comrades were torn apart by artillery fire. Simone and the other resistance members were buried in a mass grave, something the government likely intended as an insult. But instead, her final fate became a part of the legends about her. For when the mass grave was exhumed years later, it was discovered that her bones were mixed in with all the others who died at the palace gates. Now, it's said that Simone lives on in the bones of all her countrymen. It's an interesting story, and probably the best of the Dusk Star myths if you ask me. We'll talk about the symbolism and metaphor at play here soon, but first, let's talk about the events of the story itself. It's not perfectly clear where or when Simone's story takes place, but based on her outfit and rifle, I think it's likely set around World War I. We know that World War II took place in the Night in the Woods universe. Characters do mention it, so we can assume that World War I still happened in their timeline as well. Conveniently, this is exactly where Scruff Bucket, who drew the thumbnail image for this video, set Simone's story as well. In any case, World War I is a perfect time period for a story like Simone's. World War I was very much a product of the changing world. Technology had dramatically advanced, but the tactics had yet to catch up. Armies had access to things like tanks and machine guns, but they were still using Napoleonic tactics. The same was true with government systems. Despite the rise of democracy in some parts of the world, many countries were still ruled by monarchs with absolute power. I'm willing to bet that this conflict is part of what led to the issues in Simone's country. Again, we don't know what country it was, but the mention of palace gates implies that some type of royalty was in charge, probably a king or a queen, who, it seems, targeted one of the country's historically oppressed groups to further their own designs, something else that was very commonplace during the early 20th century. It still happens now as well, unfortunately. One doesn't need to look far to see examples of this, but it certainly happened frequently in Europe during the World War I, World War II era, something that any student of history would know. While we're still talking history, I recently had a great conversation about Simone's character design with my good friend the Caretaker, who put together the thumbnail image itself, over on my Discord server. He concludes that the style of uniform worn by Simone is a British make, while her rifle is the American-made M1903. Thus, he suspects that Simone might have been a British soldier who fought alongside Americans during World War I. Another interesting piece of history here is that Simone's name appears to be a reference to Simone Segouin, a French freedom fighter who battled against the German occupation of her country during World War II. I'll link her Wikipedia page below, but just like the Simone of the Night in the Woods universe, she was known for undertaking dangerous missions and sabotaging German supply lines and positions. Moving on to symbolism and metaphor, Simone's story is similar to the other Dusk Stars. Like Castius and Dora before her, she's a rebel, someone who thumbed their nose at authority and fought back against a system that oppressed others. In their videos, I said that I could easily see Castius and Dora as tattoos and on band t-shirts, and I feel the same way about Simone. In fact, I have a friend in real life who has Simone tattooed on her arm. She showed it to me and my wife at a wedding back in the fall, and my wife didn't recognize Simone, but I did right away, which, I think, shows off how much of a Night in the Woods nerd I've become over the last 3 years here on this channel. Every now and then, you do see the game out in the wild, and it always warms my heart. Overall, I think that Simone is probably the most heroic of the Dusk Stars. It's very easy for me to imagine her evading the authorities, targeting royal positions, and finally charging to her death in front of the palace gates like the badass she is. It's an incredible story, one that clearly resonates with May and the fan base. That's all for Simone. Check back next month for a video on the Big Snake, the next Dusk Star from Night in the Woods. Thanks for watching. Special thanks to Scruff Bucket for drawing the art used in the thumbnail image, and the Caretaker for putting together the thumbnail itself. To check out more of Scruff Bucket's art, just follow the link down below. Huge thanks to my Night in the Woods collaborators Wolf.Godwin, Allan Naslund, and Jordi Jaen Moreno. To check out all 3 of these amazing artists, just follow the links down in the description box. Big shout out to all my Silver and Gold tier YouTube channel members and Patreon subscribers, including James Pruitt, Lil Caesar, Reed, Thonian, Anna Novikova, and Sean Bobby, who get early access to these videos thanks to donations of $5 to $10 a month. See you guys next time, and go birds!